Mario, a lot of press, of course, in what the Middle East conflict has done and the Strait of Hormuz closure has done to oil and gas prices and fertilizer prices. But usually the fertilizer discussion is centered around nitrogen. But that strait closure and the problems there are also affecting sulfur quite a bit.
Yeah, so the Strait of Hormuz or that region of the world controls about 40% of sulfur, elemental sulfur, which is a huge part of most manufacturing when it comes to phosphates and metals and just the raw ingredient itself for ag purposes. So we're looking at, losing right now or things being tied up for sulfur in that region for the time being and really for quite a long time. I don't think it's going to get resolved anytime soon. So it's driven up the price of sulfur around the globe, and everyone's trying to access some tons from places they haven't historically done business with, and that's what we're seeing today.
So the sulfur, is it a result of the oil and gas, oil refining then in the region?
Yeah, so all our sulfur, our big piles of sulfur that we have here in Canada, and we have about 10 million tons sitting in Fort McMurray, is all sulfur that is produced from oil and gas refining. So back in the day, we used to get sulfur kind of for free from oil and gas emissions in the atmosphere, and that would deposit through rainfall. And since we've had better environmental practices, removing the sulfur from oil and gas, uh, we've lost those atmospheric depositions, and um, now we have to, supplement that. But we do have large piles of it. Accessing it's a bit difficult, but we have a lot of it there. And of course, the Middle East produces a fair bit, and so does Russia. But Russia's been hasn't been exporting for quite some time now. And then now with the conflict in Iran, uh, buyers have lost a major source of sulfur there too. So things are now a little more stressed on where to source it and how much to source it and how soon they can get it. And that's going to affect pricing overall.
So what have you seen prices do? Can you give us some benchmarks?
Yeah, so when I first started with BiziSul 2 years ago, we were at about $70 per 70 USD per ton. Whereas today we're sitting, it changes weekly or sometimes even daily, but we're about $580 USD a ton. So that's just the progression that we've seen in the last year and a half here on both. It's not just because of conflicts, but partially, but also big draws on sulfur. So use of batteries, lithium production, gold production, nickel production, copper production, all these mining industries or these industrial uses that uh, use a lot of sulfur for different reasons. Those have all ramped up and are drawing all from the same supplies around the world. So, and like I said, 80% of the sulfur we need or we have is produced from oil and gas.
So sulfur to sulfuric acid, is that how it's used industrially?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, they'll sometimes burn the elemental sulfur in its purest form and then create sulfuric acid. Sometimes they buy it in sulfuric acid form as well. So when we talk phosphate production, they're buying sulfuric acid to react with phosphate rock. So already in that regards too, we're looking at um, probably double what it was this time last year or close to somewhere in there. So when we're looking at pricing, I suspect there isn't going to be much of a reset at all if sulfuric is double and anhydrous is sitting at a fairly high price as well. So I think we're in for another year of high pricing.
So the anhydrous ammonia, of course, as a component of phosphate fertilizers, then you get the sulfuric acid component. So even though we say, oh, well, there's no phosphate coming out of the Strait of Hormuz, phosphate prices are still going to, or phosphate values are still going to be affected.
For sure. In fact, I've heard rumblings of some phosphate production being shut down in Brazil just because of the price of sulfur. And these are low grade deposits that they're dealing with, so they're not high grade phosphate rock. So they can't make a go of it, or they can't justify the expenditure, maybe is better put, producing with the price of sulfur where it is.
Now, if the conflict were to end soon, or when the conflict finally does end, it's still going to take a long time to catch up on where we've lost, eh?
Yes, the from what we're hearing is that the Strait of Hormuz isn't going to be able to instantly ramp up and play catch up immediately. Like, that's going to take a long time for those loads and those boats to become flowing regularly, and everything to get straightened out, and everyone to get back to norm is going to be a long time. And there's probably, I would imagine, there's some infrastructure damage too that'll have to be repaired as well. So I think there's going to be a good while before we see normal pricing.
Mario, thank you very much.
Thank you.